Amy, Child of the Stars, Chapter 3. Don't worry. You know what? Real close to here, on one of the planets of Sirius, there are violet-colored beaches. They are incredible. If only you could see the twilight of those gigantic suns. Do you travel at the speed of light? Amy thought my question comical. If I traveled that slowly, I would have been an old man by the time I got here. What speeds do you travel then? We don't usually travel. It's more a case of situating ourselves. What? We situate ourselves by simply appearing at the place we want to go to. Instantaneously? Well, we do have to wait a little while. The instruments on board have to carry out complex calculations, but from one side of the galaxy to another would take... He picked up the calculator hanging on his belt and punched in some numbers. According to our measurements of time, an hour and a half. And from one galaxy to another would take a bit more. Wow, how do you know that? Time and space stretch and shorten. Things are not what they appear to be. I don't get it. Be more clear, please. Can you explain to a baby why does that 2 and 2 make 4? No, I replied. I know they do, but I don't really know why either. Well, I can't explain things about the space, time, contractions, and curvature either, and there's no need to. Check out how those little birds glide over the sand. They look as though they're floating. How wonderful. Amy was watching a flock of birds running across the beach. They were pecking at something tasty the waves had washed up on the sand. They moved their little legs so quickly that they seemed to have no legs at all, just floating over the sand. I suddenly realized that it was late. I have to go. My grandma... No problem, she's still asleep. But I'm worried. Worried? How silly. Why? Don't live your life imagining problems that haven't yet arisen and aren't going to. Enjoy the present. You have to take advantages of your life. Always choose nice things rather than bad things for your mind. When a real problem arises, that's the time to figure out how to solve it, instead of worrying when everything is cool like now. I think you're right, but do you think there would be any point in us standing here worrying that tidal wave might possibly come along and wash us away? It would be silly not to enjoy this moment, this beautiful night. Look at those birds running along with no worry in the world. Why should we waste this moment thinking about something that doesn't exist? But my grandma does exist. Yes, she does. And she's not having any problems. Don't you think it makes more sense to enjoy this moment? Yes, but I'm worried. You're incorrigible, Mr. Paranoia? Fine. Let's see your grandma then. Amy picked up his television set and began to press the buttons. A picture of the road leading to my house appeared. Images of trees and rocks along the path passed across the screen. Everything was in color and all lit up as if it were daytime. The picture on the screen passed through the walls of the house, and there was my grandma, deeply asleep in her bed. You could even hear her breathing. That sure was an amazing device. She's sleeping like a little angel, commented Amy with a laugh. Is that some kind of recording? I asked. No, this is live and direct. Let's go into the dining room. The screen showed the passage leading from the bedroom, and the dining room appeared. There was a table, the checked tablecloth, and at the place where I usually sat, my grandma had left a plate with my dinner, covered by another plate upside down. That looks like my UFO, Amy joked. Let's see what you have for dinner. He adjusted something on the little TV, and the plate on top became as transparent as glass. Through it, a piece of steak and some French fries could be seen. Yuck! Amy exclaimed with disgust. How can you people eat corpse? Corpse? Cow corpse, dead cows. Are you going to eat a piece of dead cow? The way he was talking about it made me feel disgusted too. How does this TV set work? Where's the camera? I asked him, very intrigued. It doesn't need a camera. This gadget captures, focuses, selects, filters, encodes, decodes, amplifies, and projects. Simple, isn't it? He seemed to be making fun of me. How come it looks like daytime when it's really night? There are other lights that your eyes can't see. This device picks them up. How complicated. Not at all. I built this homemade thing myself. Yourself? It's really out of date, but I love it. It's a souvenir, a homework assignment from my primary school. You guys are a bunch of geniuses. Not at all. Do you know how to multiply? Of course, I replied. Then you're a genius to someone who doesn't. It's all a question of degree. A portable radio or flashlight is a miracle to an aboriginal living in the rainforest. You're right. Do you think that someday here on Earth we'll be able to have inventions like yours? For the first time, he looked serious. Gazing at me with what seemed to be sadness, he said, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You know everything. Not everything. No one can see the future, luckily. Why did you say luckily? Just imagine, life would have no meaning if we could see into the future. Would you want to know the final score of the game you're watching before it ends? No, that really annoys me. It's no fun at all, I replied. Do you like to hear a joke that you already know? I hate that too. That's boring. Would you like to know what you're going to get for your birthday ahead of time? That's worse still. The surprise would be completely spoiled. I liked his way of teaching, how he offered clear examples. Life would lose all meaning if the future were known ahead of time. You can only figure out the possibilities. How do you mean? For example, you can figure out the possibility or probability of the human race saving itself. Saving itself? You mean we're in that much danger? Think about the pollution, the greenhouse effect, new epidemics, the crazy weather, all the terrorism, the wars, and the bombs. Does it mean that we risk disappearing too, like worlds with bad guys? There is a real possibility. The relationship between science and solidarity on your planet is heavily titled towards science, forgetting about the heart, the well-being, and the happiness of the people and all creatures on the world, and all of nature itself. Is that very risky? But of course, many civilizations like yours have vanished for this very reason. You are at a critical point in your evolution. These are delicate moments, dangerous times. Amy was scaring me. I had never thought seriously about the possibility of a third world war, or of terrorism as a serious threat to the planet, or there being an environmental catastrophe. I puzzled over it a long time. Suddenly, I had a fantastic idea, one that could solve all the world's problems. You guys could do something, I said enthusiastically. Something like what? I don't know, arrive in 1,000 spaceships and tell all the presidents not to make war and not to cause pollution. Something like that. Amy smiled. Impossible. Why? We have several good reasons for not interfering with the evolution of this world or any other world. Give me one at least. All right, one then. If we did something like that in the first place, there would be terror, heart attacks, and general paranoia caused by all those movies about space invaders that portrayed us as horrendous and evil toads. We don't have hearts made of stone, you know. We couldn't bring about something like that. Phew, I don't think it would be that serious. People are already prepared. I think that if you landed in the park of any city and you came with a message of peace, well, I must admit that due to our efforts so far, it wouldn't be as serious as before. But anyhow, we couldn't do it because there are still millions of people who would panic. Besides, in that friendly declaration, we would have to tell you that there is no place for weapons, which should be transformed into work tools. People would think that it was an extraterrestrial disarmament plan, a trick so that we would dominate the planet. I guess you're right. But let's suppose that they were able to understand that we intend no harm. They still wouldn't give up their weapons. Why not? Because they would be afraid of what other countries might do. Who's going to be the first to disarm? But they have to trust. Those who lead the nations of this world aren't very trustful of other leaders. And they're right, because some of them are neither friendly or honest, and do indeed desire to dominate everything that they can. So, if we truly did bring about the disarmament of a nation, we would be blundering badly, leaving it at the mercy of not very friendly neighbors. We had better avoid getting into that. Don't you agree? I was feeling really uneasy. I kept trying to think of a solution to prevent war and save humanity. After I thought about it for a long time, the only thing that occurred to me was that the extraterrestrials could take power on Earth by force, destroy our weapons and the factories that pollute the environment, and oblige us to live in peace. I told Amy this. When he had stopped laughing, he pointed out that I was thinking like an earthling, and that I still wanted to bury alive all the evil people of the world, as in my childish daydream. Force, destroy, oblige, to us, that's prehistoric thinking. Human liberty is something sacred, both one's own and that of others. Each person is valuable, and his or her will is to be respected. Acting any other way would be doing violence, a word that comes from violate, which is something completely opposed to our nature. Then, your people don't make war? I hadn't even finished saying this before I felt stupid for asking. He looked at me affectionately and putting his hand on my shoulder and said, "We can't make war, Peter." "No? Why?" "Because we love." "I don't get it. You love whom?" "We love it all. People, nature, animals, life, everything. Those who love can't harm what they love. So forget about invasions or wars and the like. We're not here to destroy anything, nor to harm anybody, but to build and help." Amy's answer really surprised me. These people were incredibly good. He started laughing when he perceived what I was thinking. We're not good, but normal. Those who are not that normal are the ones around here. Why us? Because you're a little bit crazy, of course. You don't live according to nature laws, which are a reflection of the will of the universe. Have you seen any other species, apart from the human, making war on its own kind? After thinking over for a while, I said not. You see, that would be madness, like destroying nature, which no other species does either. but you think it's normal because you don't live accordingly to universal or natural laws. Some people are so crazy that they don't even believe that an intelligence and a precise purpose lies behind the universe. I knew Amy was talking about God, and I believed in God. Well, a little, though mostly out of fear rather than for any other reason. However, lately I was beginning to have my own doubts about even that. It seemed to me that only religious types believed in God, or people who aren't very educated. Anyhow, I have an uncle who is a nuclear physicist in a university, and he says that intelligence killed God. "Your uncle is foolish," remarked Amy, smiling and perceiving my thoughts. "I don't think so. He's considered one of the most intelligent men in the world." "He's foolish," Amy insisted. "Can an apple kill the apple tree? Can a wave hurt the ocean?" I started thinking about God, a little ashamed that I had doubted his existence. "Listen, take away the white beard and robes, please." Amy was laughing because he had seen my mental images. "Then he doesn't have a beard? God shaved?" My space friend was delighted by my confusion. "That's an Earth-style God," he commented. "Why?" "Because of his earthly appearance." What was Amy trying to tell me? That God hasn't a human appearance but looks like some kind of extraterrestrials? He knew what I was thinking. Laughing, he took a twig and drew a human figure on the sand. "In worlds like yours or mine, and in other similar ones, the basic model is the same, with us having head, trunk, and limbs. Yet there are little differences of height, color of the skin, shape of the ears, and so. Those differences are present here, among the different human types in this world. It's true, but you look like a normal boy from Earth. How is that possible?" "I look like an Earthling because the people of my planet closely resemble human boys. For that very reason, I can be on this mission here without scaring anyone by my appearance. However, I'm not a boy, and that's why my hair is white. But the inhabitants of other worlds have different shapes, according to the characteristics of their planets. For instance, in worlds where there's only water, what use would legs have? There, the people shaped like fish, because that's what's most convenient and practical. Like mermaids? Something like that. But God, as you would say, doesn't have a face or the shape of a man from your world or from mine, nor of any other world in the universe." "No? Then he has the face of a what?" "Come on, let's go for a walk, and I'll explain it to you." We began walking on the path that led to the town. Amy put his arm across my shoulder. At that moment, I felt that he was an older brother I never had. Some nocturnal birds squawked in the distance, and Amy seemed delighted by the sounds. He breathed in the sea air. What you call God doesn't have a human appearance, or any form at all. There's only an infinite being that penetrates all, made of pure creative intelligence, pure love. And that's why the universe is so marvelous. Amy's face was shining in the night as he talked, which moved me, in spite of not being the religious kind. But when I thought about the inhabitants of the primitive worlds that Amy had mentioned, and also about the bad people on this planet, those who deserve to be thrown into a deep pond, it didn't seem to me that the universe was such a marvelous a place after all. What about the bad people? There'll be good people someday. It would have been better they have been born good from the very start. That way, there'll be no evil anywhere. If you don't know evil, how are you going to be able to enjoy goodness? How would you be able to appreciate it? Asked Amy. I don't understand what you mean. Don't you think it's beautiful that you are able to see? I don't know. I never thought about it. I guess so. If you had been born blind and suddenly you would see, then your sense of sight would seem to be marvelous to you. Oh yes. It's the same with those who have lived difficult, violent existence. When they overcome their difficulties and attain a life that's peaceful and harmonious, they truly appreciate it. Since what is difficult to achieve is valued more than what comes without having to try. It's beautiful to be able to make progress, to overcome the obstacles, to learn to solve your problems and grow up in every way. If, on the other hand, we were born without problems, we couldn't probably appreciate what we have. We were walking in the moonlight along the path, bordered by trees, plants, and foliage. We passed my house. Wait for me here a minute. I quietly went indoors to look for a sweater. On the dining room table, I saw my plate, covered up and waiting for me. I felt rather proud because even without removing the plate on top, I was already knew what was under it. Then I started to have doubts, so I took a peek to make sure. And yes, it looked exactly as it had on my friend's little TV set, but I still wasn't hungry. I rejoined Amy and we continued walking and talking. We still hadn't reached the town and I couldn't yet see any street lights. Amy was contemplating everything while we talked. Do you know what you're doing? He asked me unexpectedly. No, what? You're walking. You can walk. Oh yes, of course. And what's so surprising about that? Nothing for you, but think about the people who have been injured and who only after months or even years of rehabilitation are able to walk again. For them, the ability to walk is really extraordinary, and they're thankful for it. They enjoy it. You, on the other hand, walk around all the time without paying it the least bit of attention, without thinking that you are doing something special. You're right, Amy. You're telling me so many new things. Thanks. You're welcome, sir. That's what we're here for, he said merrily, giving me a wink. Chapter 4. The Police. We came to the first street that was lit. It must have been about 11 at night. For me, just walking around town so late was an adventure, but I felt protected by Amy. While we were strolling around, Amy paused to look at the moon through the leaves on the trees. Every so often, he told me that we should listen to the croaking of the frogs, the chirping of the night crickets, and the distant murmur of the waves. He stopped to breathe in the aroma of the pine trees, the tree bark, and the soil. He frequently paused to admire a house that appealed to him, or a road, or a street corner. Look how pretty those street lights are, pretty enough to paint. Notice how the light falls on that vine, and those roofs outlined against the moon. Life is here for us to enjoy, Peter. Try to pay attention to all that life brings to you. There is magic in every moment, but we hardly notice all these simple things. Try to feel, to perceive, instead of thinking. The most profound meaning of life lies beyond thoughts. You know what, Peter? Life is a fairy tale come true. It's a beautiful gift that was given to you because you are loved. His energy and his words helped me to see everything from a new point of view. It seemed incredible to me that this was the normal, everyday world that I never paid much attention to. Now I was seeing it all as a miracle, that all this time I was living in a kind of paradise, and that I never noticed it before. Instead, I had been sleeping, absorbed in all my own thoughts and not paying attention to anything else. We arrived at the town square. Some teenagers were standing at the door of a disco. Others were talking in the middle of the square. The place was very quiet, especially now the summer season was coming to an end. No one paid us any attention, despite Amy's suit and his white hair. Maybe they just assumed that it was some kind of kid's outfit. I imagined what would happen if people knew what kind of kid was in town. Reporters and news would show up and surround us. "No thanks," said Amy, reading my mind. "I don't want to become a martyr." I didn't understand what he meant. First thing, they'll take me prisoner for having entered the country illegally. Then they accused me of being a spy, and then tortured me to obtain information about our invasion plans, and, most of all, our scientific achievements, so they would try converting them into weapons. Then, after having squeezed me dry like a lemon, the doctors would want to take a look inside my beautiful little body. No, thanks. Amy was laughing as he described his horrible scene. Yet, I recognized there was truth in what he said, and I felt uneasy on his behalf. All the more so, when he wanted to chat to the boys in the square, I stopped him and we sat down on a park bench at a distance from the teenagers. "Mr. Paranoia is internally worried," he said, laughing. I didn't pay him any attention, but started thinking how if the extraterrestrials revealed themselves little by little, so that everyone got used to them, one day they could come out in the open. We're doing something like that. We do give out hints and signs, sometimes a great many, including sightings of UFOs, but only according to a certain plan. I'll explain it all to you soon. However, as to showing ourselves openly, I've explained why it's not advisable. Indeed, the laws forbid it. What laws? The universal laws. In the evolved worlds, there are general rules that everyone must respect. One of these is not to interfere with non-evolved worlds. Non-evolved worlds? That's what we call worlds that don't have a stable planetary civilization. And they don't have it because they don't live in accordance with the fundamental law of the universe. What does all that mean? Worlds whose inhabitants live in accord with that law have a single government. There are no longer any frontiers, and everything is shared in brotherhood, peace, and harmony. That's what it means to live in accord with the fundamental law of the universe. That's what an evolved world is like. I don't understand. What is this foundation law of what? You see, you've never heard of it. Amy was making fun of me. You're not evolved. But I'm just a kid. Surely the adults must have heard of it. The scientists, the presidents of countries. Amy laughed loudly. Adults, scientists, presidents, not likely. Even leaders of countries have never heard of it? Well, that's the way it goes in your world. That's why there isn't as much happiness as there should be. But what's this lore? I'll tell you about it later. Really? I got quite excited, thinking that I would soon know something that almost nobody else did. If you behaved yourself, Amy choked. I started thinking hard about this rule against intervening in non-evolved planets, and I realized that something didn't fit. Then, you're violating this rule, I exclaimed with surprise. Bravo, you didn't miss that detail. Of course not. First you said that intervening is forbidden, yet here you are talking to me. This is intervening, or isn't it? What I'm doing is not intervening in the evolution of humankind on Earth. Showing ourselves openly and communicating with everyone, as you suggested, that would be intervening. And do you know why it's forbidden to intervene? I've no idea. If we did, Apart from the disasters I have already told you about, the most frightening catastrophe in the history of this world would take place. He was scaring me. What catastrophes, Amy? If the people on Earth heard about the economic, scientific, social, and spiritual systems that we use, they would want to imitate us. Everyone would want to follow our example. And they would all lose respect for their leaders, for all their own traditions and beliefs, and for the institutions that make up human society. Then the world's power structures would collapse, endangering our whole civilization's stability. Some powerful people would get mad when they saw that they were losing their status. It would be complete chaos, possibly the end of everything that your people have achieved up to the present time. But then, you who are such good guys could step in to prevent such a disaster and make sure everything in our world gets fixed, I said, half joking. That would be a trap. Like one student taking another student's exams for him? Would you like another student to sit your exams for you and take the credits? No, because I'll miss the satisfaction of succeeding myself. And if we arranged everything here, then the entire population on Earth would miss out on the satisfaction of overcoming their problems through their own effort, and so reaching a superior level of civilization. Don't you think that's so? You're right. I hadn't thought about that. For many reasons, we can't intervene any further than what's permitted. My contact with you here is a part of an aid plan. Please explain that more. This aid plan is like a medicine that we have to give in small doses, slowly, subtly, very subtly. But what's the medicine? Information. Information? What information? Well, we've been around here since ancient times, but it was only after the first atomic bomb that we began giving you signs of our existence. You mean UFOs? Right, that was done, and is still being done, to give you some evidence of the existence of other intelligent beings in the universe, and to give you a clue that we are aware of your recent warlike discoveries. Anyone with half a mind could deduce that we're not aggressive, and more than that, if we, who are more advanced than you, are not violent, you shouldn't be violent either. Why do you choose to put such a burden on your shoulders? I asked. Amy looked at me with affection and said, It's not a burden, but a pleasure. Because solidarity is something natural and universal. The more evolution, the more solidarity. We can't stop ourselves helping those who are in need, because we see them and us as all being part of the same thing. Does it give you pleasure when you think about the sufferings and hunger of so many helpless people in the poor countries of this world? Of course not. One could say that since they live in other countries, it isn't your problem. Well, I get affected just the same, even though they might look different from me and speak a foreign language. Poor people. You see, solidarity is something natural. It happens of its own accord. Many people are upset about what is happening in those places and try to help. Some go out to those poor countries to assist in any way they can. Why? Out of solidarity. We have come here motivated by the same force of solidarity. It's that simple. Among other things, we wish you to understand that handling great power, like nuclear energy, and there is another even more powerful energy, can be very dangerous and requires great delicacy and care. It must never be used for the purposes of destruction, especially among your own species. And it's not only about you, because in the wrong hands, that most powerful energy could even affect other worlds, harming cosmic alignment, with consequences at a galactic level. Wow. Yes, sir. Though not right now. But science is advancing. so we must be mindful of this risk. Don't you think that makes sense? Yes, totally. I'm understanding much better now. Besides all that, we established occasional contact with some people, like you, and we also send telepathic messages. Those telepathic messages pass through the air like radio waves. They reach everybody, but some people are not so sensitive, while others have receivers able to catch them. Everything we do is for the purpose of giving you information or assistance. Amazing! And we don't even notice. I think you should reveal more about yourself, at least a bit more, as much as you can. At present, we can't show ourselves too much, Peter. Why not? Because the universe has already given you enough information about how to transform the human world. And the planet too, through an increase in solidarity. That's the only thing you need for your world to change positively and to end the dangers that threaten you. I haven't been aware of this information that you're telling me about, because you never got interested in the subject. Yet millions of pages have been written, many books, and some films too, inspired by us. That is why it's now time to practice what you already know, to solve these personal and social problems of yours that have grown so big, better than expecting ETs to come and do it for you. We ETs don't want to become an avoidance drug. Avoidance drug? Yes, the whole subject of ETs can be used as a fantasy to escape from reality. We don't want to be used like this, but for it to work the other way around, by encouraging you to face your problems and overcome them. I understand. That makes sense? At the same time, we must limit the sightings of ETs to the minimum because we don't want certain governments to become paranoid and invest huge amounts of money in research, nor do we want to give them this justification for more armaments, while millions of people are starving and there are so many problems solved. I really understand that. So that's why you don't show up as much as I was thinking you should. Thank you for your concern for all the people, Amy. Our duty is our pleasure. As to how much we show ourselves, I hope you will come to understand that nothing happens by chance, and that everything that hovers around your world, seen and unseen, all conforms to one great aid plan. Do you mean that there aren't independent spaceships in search of uranium or things like that? There is scientific research going on, of course, but not independently. Nothing in our world is for other than the highest good according to the plan I mentioned. When will you be able to appear openly in front of people? Only when your people have learned to live in a civilized manner will that big encounter will take place. It can't be before then. Our respect for the freedom of all people is based in universal solidarity. But surely you could do something so we could get faster to that great encounter? Evolution is something very delicate, Peter. It's similar to the education of a child. You cannot push beyond certain limits. What we do, we must do with great care. That is why we can only suggest things very subtly through special people like you. Like me? What's so special about me? Maybe I'll tell you later. For the moment, you only need to know that you have a certain characteristic. I have to go soon, Peter. You'd like to see me again? Of course. That would be fantastic. You're a nice pal. And you are a great guy. But if you want me to return, you'll have to write a book about everything that you experienced with me. That's why I came here. It's also part of the aid plan. Me? Write a book? But I don't know how to write books. I protested. Amy ignored me. Write it as if it was just a story. A kind of fantasy adventure. Otherwise, everybody will think you're mad or a liar. Also, the book must appeal to young people, because besides being the future of the humanity, they are more willing to take on board the need for a new planetary consciousness. That's what's going to make possible the existence of a better world. And young people need steering in the right direction, don't you think? He said, giving me a wink. I thought Amy was right, but writing a book by myself sounded like an impossible task. Amy was aware of this though, and before I could say anything, he had a suggestion. Ask that cousin of yours who likes to write, the one who works at the bank, to help you. You can tell the story, he can write it down. He'll find the right style and vocabulary. Amy seemed to know more about me than I did myself. This book will also be part of the information I was telling you about, but more than this, we're not allowed to do. Aren't you glad that there is not the slightest possibility that an advanced but evil civilization could have, as you feared, invaded the earth? Yes, of course. This is because we have never helped any violent people to develop. I saw what Amy was driving at. If you folks on Earth didn't overcome your differences, but carried on with your blind materialism and violence, and yet we still went on helping you, you would simply use your new scientific knowledge to try to exploit and conquer other civilizations in space. You're right. I guess we could end up taking our delightful habits everywhere we went. Besides which, as I mentioned, there's another type of very powerful energy you don't know about. Atomic energy compared with this energy would be like a match compared with the sun. Wow! Yes, sir. I was talking about that when I mentioned consequences at a galactic level. That's why we can't run the risk of a non-evolved world like yours coming into possession of this energy and endangering the peace of our evolved worlds, or even starting a cosmic catastrophe. I'm getting anxious, Amy. Because of the danger of cosmic catastrophe, Peter? No, because I think it's too late. Too late to save humanity? No, for me to go to bed. Amy was laughing his head off. Chill out, Peter. We're having a look at your grandma now. He took the small television from his belt buckle, and Grandma appeared on the screen, sleeping with her mouth open. She's having a great time, he joked. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep too. Fine, let's go, he said. We were walking back to my house when a police car drove by. Seeing two boys alone at that time of the night, the policeman stopped the car, got out, and came over to us. I was really afraid that they would arrest my new friend, take him to jail, and submit him to the torture he spoke about earlier. What are you two doing around here so late? One of them said, pointing a flashlight at our face. Walking around, enjoying life, Amy answered very calmly. What about you guys? Are you working? Hunting down criminals? And as usual, he laughed. When I saw how Amy was acting in front of the police, I was even more fearful than before. But they thought my friend was funny and laughed too. I tried joining in, but it was too nervous for me. I couldn't. Where'd you find that outfit? On my planet. Amy nonchalantly replied, revealing himself, which scared me to death. Oh, then you must be a Martian. Not a Martian, but I'm an extraterrestrial, Amy said merrily as if he didn't have a care about the world, while my terror increased. So, where's your UFO? Asked one of the policemen, observing Amy with some amusement. The policeman thought Amy was just playing a kid's game, but of course, he was simply telling the truth. I parked it down at the beach, underwater, didn't I, Peter? Now Amy was getting me mixed up in this mess. I didn't know what to do. I tried to smile and could only grimace. I didn't dare telling the truth because my fear that he would end up in jail. Don't you have a ray gun? The men in uniform were enjoying the conversation. So was Amy, but I was feeling more and more desperate. I don't need one. We don't attack anyone. We're good guys. What if a bad guy came at you with a gun like this? The policeman showed him the gun, while pretending to be threatening. If someone tried to attack me, I'll paralyze him with my mental force. That's interesting. Let's see it. Paralyze us. Sure, you asked for it. The effect on you will last for 10 minutes. The three of them laughed loudly. Suddenly, Amy went very quiet and looked at them intently. In a strange, deep, authoritarian voice, he ordered, "You will remain immobile for 10 minutes. You cannot move, starting now." He flicked his fingers, and there the cops remained, frozen with smiles on their faces, right where they'd been standing. See, Peter, in worlds that aren't very involved, all you need to do is tell the truth as if it were a game or fantasy. He explained to me as he touched the nose of one of the policemen and then gently pulled the mustache of the other. Both of them stood motionless like statues. The smiles on their faces were beginning to look tragic. Everything Amy was doing made me feel even more afraid. "Let's run away. Let's get away from here. They might wake up," I exclaimed, trying not to talk too loudly. "Don't worry, stay calm. We still have plenty of time before the 10 minutes are up," Amy said. To have a bit more fun, he turned around their caps. So the peaks were at the back. My only desire was to get away from this place and from this crazy, irresponsible extraterrestrial. "Let's go, let's get out of here, Amy." "Mr. Paranoia is worrying again instead of enjoying the moment," he said, taking the bullets out of their guns and throwing them away. "Fine, let's go." Reluctantly, he went up to the smiling policeman and with the same voice he had used before, he instructed, "When you wake up, you will have entirely forgotten about the two boys." We reached the first corner and turned towards the beach, leaving the policeman far behind. I felt much better. "How did you do that?" "Hypnosis." "Hypnosis? Cool. It's nothing, everybody can do that." "I don't think so. I've heard that not everybody can be hypnotized." It could have been the case with one of them. "Everybody can be hypnotized," said Amy. "And what's more, most everybody is already hypnotized." "What do you mean? I'm not hypnotized. I'm awake." Amy laughed a lot at this. "Do you remember when we were walking down the path?" "Yes, I remember." "Everything looked different to you. Beautiful. And you remarked that you must have been asleep for not having noticed that before, right?" "Oh yes. It seems like I was hypnotized then. Maybe you hypnotized me?" "On the contrary, you were awake on that path. Now you're asleep again. Imagining that everything is ugly and dangerous. You're not listening to the ocean. You're not paying attention to the sweetness of the night air. You're not aware of your ability to walk or see. You're not enjoying your breathing. You're hypnotized, and what's more, you're hypnotized negatively." Negatively? There are many ugly ideas that don't have a basis in reality. They're just dreams, fantasies, unjustified fears. They're delirium, craziness, and because they aren't good ideas, they're not even craziness that's fun. They're nightmares. Like what ideas, Amy? Like what goes through the heads of so many people in this world a million times a day, like your worries about the policemen and your space monsters. Amy laughed, which made me laugh too. Then he stopped, looked towards the ocean and said, "And like people who believe in war, who believe that killing other human beings can be justified, that's something glorious. They even tell themselves that God ordered them to kill, or that by killing or torturing civilians, children, women, and old people, God will be pleased with them. So pleased that they will go straight to heaven. That's hypnosis, Peter, and it's hypnosis of the nightmare variety. Utter madness and in total contradiction of human and universal solidarity and of the power of love." "You're totally right, Amy." And there's a more common kind of nightmare, Peter. Enormous numbers of people live frightened by life itself, frightened that they're going to lose their health, their job, their mate, their lives. Others are convinced that the world and outer space is too populated by enemies, and they go through life armed with heavy-duty locks on the door, guard dogs, and massive insurance policies. Others live in fear of ghosts, the devil, or extraterrestrials, or are convinced that the Earth is going to collide with another planet, and many other such things. All of that is hypnosis, Peter. Almost everybody here is hypnotized one way or another, in a daydream or in a nightmare of some kind, and fear is the background music. Don't they ever wake up? Yes. Every time someone is able to see that their inner darkness, their lack of internal harmony, has stopped them from enjoying the beauty of reality. Then comes the realization that the only way forward is to begin the journey of personal growth, overcoming imperfections and harmonizing with the flow of the universe life and the law of solidarity. That's what leads to the awakening. An awakened person feels that life is beautiful, and even though there are maybe difficult times, it is always an extraordinary opportunity to love, to enjoy, to grow up, and to help others. Then I remembered something really sad. When I found myself all alone in the world, after I had lost my parents. Luckily, I was a baby at that time, and so I don't actually remember them. My grandma took care of me and has always loved me. But I would have still preferred to be a normal boy with a normal family. Well, there was nothing to be done about it. Amy continued, explaining. A person on the path of a personal growth also values the problems and challenges of his or her life, knowing that all of these difficulties are tests that help a person grow in understanding that they are necessary steps to awakening. When he said that, I felt a click of understanding inside of me. Such a person remembers that bitter moments are few compared with good times, and that is why he or she can still enjoy life, despite all the ups and downs. I can't say I was much like that, nor had I seen anybody else capable of it, unless they were posing for a photo or acting in a movie. Amy knew what I was thinking. Don't you judge others by appearance. You never know what's going on inside of them, nor is that your business. Just concentrate on how you can improve yourself, instead of looking to other people to see what they do or how they seem to be. You should relish the opportunity your own life brings to you, because life is beautiful and it is short. You think that people even interrupt their evolutionary process by killing themselves because some little problem. Do you see how tragic that is? They kill themselves, Peter, instead of making the effort to understand the lesson that every problem brings and finding out how to solve it. Amy was getting hard to understand, and I was still frightened when I thought about our encounter with the police moments before. Why didn't your jokes bother those policemen? Because I appealed to their good side, to their childlike side. But they're police. He looked at me as if I had just said something really silly. Everyone has a childlike side. Never mind their nightmares, Peter. Laughing, he added, almost no one is so far gone that he can't set aside his worries for a second. If you want, let's go to a jail and look for the worst criminal. No, thanks. The majority of people on this planet are asleep. That's for sure. But in spite of it, there are more good than bad. Really? Of course. There's more love than hate in their hearts. It doesn't seem that way. Even bad people believe they're right in what they think or do. One can't live thinking one is wrong. Some people really do terrible things, but it's still because of faulty thinking, bad dreams, hypnosis. If you can show them their good sides, in general they will repay good with good. But if you only see their bad side, they repay evil with evil. Then, if people are not so bad, why is there more unhappiness in this world than happiness? Because your way of thinking and of how you live together is still the same as it was in the early history of human race. When there were huge distances between people, when you knew nothing about other countries, and so there was ignorance, distrust, and dispute among all people of the earth. Everyone lived terrified of each other, locked inside their walls and castles, thinking only of war, and of conquering or defending. In those times, the saying was, "What is unknown or different is sure to be danger." And many times, it was. But now, the situation has progressed enormously. Human beings can know each other better. There's global communication and initiatives that can be taken for the common good, since people realize that to be united and in peace is good for everyone. It's true, Amy. Unfortunately, the old way of thinking, what is unknown or different is sure to be a danger, still underpins many laws, customs, social, economic systems. So there is competition, division, egoism, dishonesty, distrust, widespread among people, organizations and nations. If we can evolve our thinking to suit the new global conditions for today, life will be better and people will be happier. What new ways of thinking should we adopt? For instance, to make a friend of what is unknown and different instead of feeling threatened. Otherwise, you may just turn out to have lost the chance of making your best friend in the world. I understood what Amy was suggesting, an enormous and difficult change of attitude, but that he was right anyway. Think what would happen if we took a positive attitude, one that was unselfish, honest, affectionate towards others, towards everything, known or unknown, familiar or strange. Think about the society with our knee-jerk attitude of disgust, rejection, challenge, or coldness. Think how the world would be transformed, how laws, customs, social, economical system would change for the positive, how people would be more happy, and how this could produce a fantastic change for the future of humanity. Actually, at that point, I didn't understand much of what Amy was saying, but later, after his departure, I remembered it and found I could understand it, and then I was able to guide my cousin to write it down more or less the way Amy was saying it. End of chapter 4. See you at the next video.